So, as many of you probably know, a new gacha game has come out. It's Genshin 2, otherwise known as Wuthering Waves, and I'm planning on doing a video on it once I maybe finish the first chunk of the story before I actually, feel like I can give my thoughts on it, because I've beaten a couple of bosses, so I think I've made some progress, but I feel like I'm really not there yet where I can say, oh yeah, this game is definitely worth playing. I mean, it's fun, but I would like there to be some substance in that video, but because a new gacha has come out, there is a lot of discourse right now about, oh, well, FGO should add X, and FGO should have Y, and I want it to be like Z. And this happens, to be honest, every single time a new gacha game comes out. You know, when Genshin came out way back in the day, people were like, dude, what if we had an open world at FGO game? And then Star Rail came out and it was like, dude, we gotta have like a pseudo open world game where we also can like auto our combat, and then we can fix the pity system, get ourselves these nice daily missions that we have, which to be fair is really nice in Star Rail. I do feel like that's where I get most of my gemmies from. But when that came out, I didn't really want to talk about it because I was like, okay, this just happens every single time a new mobile game comes out. But this one is the one that I am actively seeing more and more people talk about. And I think it's fine that if you look at a different gacha game and you say, hey, I think it'd be really cool if FGO got this in their game, because I'm guilty of that. I did the video talking about, well, I really like the Arknight's base system in that game, and I think FGO is primed to have a similar feature with like a Chaldea base system. I think that's perfectly fine. But it gets to a point where you're just wanting like a Hoyoverse FGO or Fate style game, which does sound nice, like that's really cool, but people are trying to dance around that for some reason. They're just saying like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that I want Genshin FGO, I'm saying I want FGO to have all of these traits. And it does get a little bit annoying at times, because then people start bringing up stuff that they're like, oh, FGO is doing this wrong, or FGO is doing X, Y, or Z, and I don't like it. Which, for one, if you're playing a game and you're not happy with it, you probably should just not play the game or take a break, because if something is not bringing you happiness that you're supposed to be doing for recreation, I can't say if you're not being happy doing something and they're like, well, I'm working at Walmart, I don't like that. Well, no, you should keep your job, make sure you still have a steady income. But if you're playing something for recreation, something that's supposed to be bringing you joy and happiness, and it's not doing that, maybe it's time to take a break, right? I've definitely done that with other games that I've been playing. Like sometimes I take a break from Star Rail, sometimes I take a break from like the Dokkan games and everything, the Dragon Ball stuff, if I'm just not enjoying them, right? That's probably like a healthy thing to do, but I don't think people actually give FGO enough credit for all of the stuff that it gets right, considering how old of a game it is. I don't think a lot of these newer players actually comprehend how long 9 years is in the mobile gaming market, and how incredible it is that FGO is somehow still around. I mean, sure, it's not like the top grossing game anymore. I believe in 2019, that was the year when FGO was the top grossing mobile game app on the world, which was crazy because that was like, oh my goodness, like beating out stuff like Fortnite is ridiculous. But now, it's like Genshin last year was 4th place, Star Rail was 8th place, and Candy Crush was 3rd place. But why would that never not be 3rd place? I mean, everybody and their mother plays that game, except for me. I play the sophisticated version of Candy Crush, and that's Dokkan Battle, all right? But I do feel that these newer players, especially the guys that are like, oh, I want them to get all these features, and then they start ragging on FGO, which, to be fair, I'm not saying that you can't say, oh, I want FGO to get some of this stuff. I think that's perfectly fine. But I think it does get to a point where we're not appreciating what this game has done, because there are so many games that have not survived the test of time, and I've seen games come and go that were really popular. I really enjoyed playing Princess Connect, and that died after its 2nd year. Same thing for the Naruto Blazing game. I'm not even that much of a Naruto fan myself, but I loved the game. It was super fun to play, and that died out around its 3rd or 4th year anniversary, I want to say. It was a little after 2, because I remember playing during a 2nd anniversary, but then after that, it did seem like it was falling off a little bit. I mean, there was even a game that I was working with that they shut down after about 6 months. They didn't even make it to 1 year, which is why back in the day, during the 1st year anniversary for a lot of these older games, and the ones that I'm going to reference are Dokkan and FGO, they are really, really old. They're both about to hit their 10th anniversary next year, which is ballistically crazy. But if you look at their 1st year anniversary, they were going nuts. And they were saying stuff like, oh, not every mobile gaming company makes it this far. And I remember stuff like Bleach Brave Souls, even during their 1st year anniversary, were ecstatic that they made it that far, especially because I don't even think they had the anime back at that point. I don't even know if the manga was going on whenever Bleach Brave Souls came out. I think like the manga ended after like its first year or something. So they were even kind of working with no new material, right? Which was really rough for them until they started introducing that stuff. But the point is, if these games are doing bad, and even if they're not doing bad, like I believe Naruto Blazing did make a mistake of introducing PvP, but Princess Connect, that was all Crunchyroll's fault. They banned all the whales because they thought they were cheating, and so they had no more money coming in. But point is, if the games are doing bad in one way or another, whether it's the developers either not kind of managing their game correctly or banning their highest paying players for some reason, I'm still never going to get over that. I'm so salty. I finally got all the characters I wanted in that game, and then they just took the game down. I'm always going to be forever salty about it, but the game will go down. You know, if a game is truly doing bad, it will go down, and I reference this all the time when I talk to people about how FGO goes through highs and lows. Before Tiamat came out, FGO was in that like 110 to 130 range in the App Store, which is really bad. Like, considering that they're always fighting for that #1 spot, if not at least trying to fight to be in the top 10, being sub 100 is not very good for them. But then they launched Tiamat and immediately jumped up to first place. So the hype is always there whenever they do decide to actually, well, launch a hype unit, and they can still maintain themselves, but it shows that they can have a massive up and downs with their release schedule. But I was discussing this with a friend, and as we were kind of talking about it, we're like, you know, FGO, for all of the things that we rag on it, like content-wise, we're like, oh my goodness, things are slow right now. They do at least consistently release events. Like, you do know about when the next event is going to come out. We know that about every week they're going to drop some type of update, whether it's something small, like the Grail Front event, and then the next week they're like, maybe we'll drop Advanced Quest, or like the Lost Belt 3 campaign. I mean, even for instance on JP, they just dropped Advanced Quest 18, I think last night, in the middle of their summer rerun that's going on right now. They're always kind of just going to drop something. We know we're going to get something every week, and if it's been like 2 or 3 weeks after an event, the most likely thing is that we're going to get a new event, or a rerun at the very least, now that it seems like they're going to be bringing those back. So as much as we rag on it for being like, oh, there's no content, dead game right now, it does have a fairly consistent release schedule, and you also got to keep in mind that FGO is a visual novel game LARPing as a mobile game, because sure, FGO's gameplay is not the most fun to play. Like, there are definitely other games that I enjoy playing more. I really like playing Star Rail. I really like playing Arknights. I think Wuthering Waves is really fun right now. Might be something that I keep up with moving forward. It's just super fun. But even FGO, there is like some fun to be had. I mean, you could do like big numbers, explode some people. I think that's very fun. I think challenge quests and boss fights, which is why I've been encouraging people to try and go take them on, can be very fun as you kind of try to navigate through the fight and get through some of the gimmicks. Sure, some of them aren't like built the best and are very annoying, but when it's like a story boss and they're really strong, like Sir Nunos is really strong, or Comet Saz is, let's just say he's pretty strong. I think it works out. I have to say that we'll say he's pretty strong because I think he's more annoying than he is a hard boss fight, but I'm sure some people have actually struggled with him. Suffice to say, you know, it's mainly here to tell a story. That is why most people are here, not for the gameplay. You get into FGO because you probably watched something like Fate Zero or Fate Stay Night or Fate Apocrypha, you know, whatever it was, right? That's going to get you into the Fate anime, and you probably enjoyed it because the shows are all really good. And then you come check out the mobile game and you start reading it, and you know, the initial story isn't the best, but it does have enough in there to kind of get you hooked. You know, if you watched Apocrypha, Orleans might not be the deepest story, but you're like, oh hey, I at least know Jean, and a Jean altar, that's kind of an interesting concept. You know, if you watch Last Encore, which that actually might be kind of the dud of the Fate animes, maybe they're not all great, but if you watch it, you probably did like Nero. And then you go to Septim and it's like, well, the story's not super deep, but hey, look, Nero, I recognize that person. Then Okeanos, I recognize Drake, that's pretty cool. London, I recognize Mordred. You know, the stories aren't the craziest, but they are smattering in characters that are recognizable, that people that have watched other Fate works will recognize. So at the very least, the main servant that you're traveling with is someone to kind of keep you there until you make it to at least Camelot, then Babylonia, where stuff starts to really pick up, and I think it really starts to find what it wants to tell, and you know, they start mapping out the story and the greater stuff they want to do with like 1.5 and Lost Belts and all that good stuff. So for it being something that heavily focuses on the story, you know, again, it's a mobile game that is secretly just a visual novel, I think it's doing fine. You know, I would like to see some more, I guess, complexities in the gameplay. I mean, we know that for Lost Belt 7, Nasu, pretty much like the main guy for Fate, the granddaddy of it all, he wanted to put in so much more for Lost Belt 7. Like, I was discussing this with my friend and saying like, dude, he probably wanted it to be one of those things where your servants, once they're beaten by Ort, they're like banished. You can't even like use them in free quests or something. So until you beat Ort, you don't get them back. Like something really, really gimmicky like that. But I don't know if they could put our servants effectively in void space or just data loss them and then be like, oh, well, bring them back, you know? I don't know if that's something they could do, but we know he wanted to do more. But it's just like, you know, the game can't handle it. But that's what we have this kind of update in the next couple of weeks, which is assumedly going to fix a lot of those problems. Like they're going to be working on what people have dubbed the spaghetti code of FGO, which is something that another old game like Dokkan has already done with their version Z update. They kind of recognized that problem already with the fact that effectively they have the same rank ups and stuff that we do, but they can't actually change some of the conditions. You know how FGO, we can change the cooldown on it, you know, we could affect little things like that. Imagine if they couldn't affect the cooldowns of skills. You know, it's really, really weird in that game, and they still can't do it, but they fixed other things, have been able to implement the various mechanics since they've kind of gone in and fixed a lot of the stuff. And I'm assuming that's what FGO wants to do, because I can't imagine with the spaghetti coding we have, how they ever got something like Melusine done, someone that can change their card type and their NP. That I just imagine that was a mission and a half to do. And I believe there was an interview where they did say, yeah, we wanted to get it done, but man, was that really hard to do. And so I imagine afterwards we'll see a lot of more unique servants like that. Suffice to say, it's just a thing that I don't like seeing going around whenever a new gacha game comes out, because apparently there's like 2 other big ones that are going to be coming out in like the next month or 2 or whatever. And it's just going to be kind of like the same discourse, because not to, you know, take a dookie on Wuthering Waves, I do like it a lot, but it's just the conversation around it is extremely annoying. Because I'm fine with speculating on like, oh, how could we implement something like this into FGO? Like, you know, Star Rail and Wuthering Waves and all these things have like a $5 monthly pass, and you get a little bit of extra currency when you log in. It's like, okay, what would that look like in FGO? You know, we don't have to implement it, but I think it's fine to speculate on those things and be like, what would that look like in our game? And what would the resource conversion be for us? I think that's interesting to have. But then when you say, man, this game sucks, it's gonna die, it's only living off the IP and everything, it's like, oof, that's a bit rough. Which, something I did think about, because sure, Fate might be living off the IP, that might be something that's really carrying it, but I'd rather have that than something like Star Rail, where Honkai Impact III just seems to like never be referenced anywhere outside of maybe Welt and Himiko, and we don't even get to bring those guys on other missions, because, you know, they're like super OP. If we have them running around, they'll probably solve stuff. So I'd rather have an IP that's like fleshing itself out more and really spreading its wings than something that's kind of like, well, I mean, we're technically part of the franchise and you'll recognize some of the characters, but are we ever going to talk about stuff that happened in Honkai Impact 3rd? Probably not. And again, I mean, that's the whole reason you get into the game. I mean, I have a buddy, this is a bit anecdotal, who just recently got into the Fate animes, and he hates gacha games. Like, he thinks they're like super predatory, doesn't like them, you know, trying to scam him out of his money and whatnot. Which is probably true. They do try to milk you for all of your money. But he was like, I really want to try it out because the story seems super interesting. And I had another friend that did try it. Unfortunately, all of his favorite servants were like the low rarity guys that weren't super good at the time, like Spartacus pre-buff. So that guy didn't really make it through. I was like, no, they buffed Spartacus. You can use him now. He's got a battery. He actually has a buster buff. No, he's fine. But it's like, yeah, that's what's going to attract new people to come in. And I'd rather have that than it, you know, not be Fate. And it was just some other game, then it would suck, you know? But because it's really like fleshing out different parts of the franchise, I mean, it's even now dipping into like Witch on the Holy Night. We've already got the Kara no Kyokai event. We're probably, fingers crossed, going to get something Tsukihime related. I'm assuming they're waiting for the VN to release on Steam for us, because I think that's what we're waiting for. We have Witch on the Holy Night, but we're waiting for Tsukihime. So once they do that over here for us, I'm assuming that's when they're going to drop the Tsukihime event, so they want everybody to read that. And I just think that's really cool. You know, I really like that it's being able to not only flesh out the Fate IP, but also some of the other ones. And who knows, maybe somebody plays FGO, plays the Tsukihime event whenever it comes out, and then they go read Tsukihime. And look at that, now they're a fan of that show as well. I think that's super lit. But what do you guys think in the comments down below? As you can tell, this is more me just kind of rambling here, just kind of getting all my thoughts out there, because I'm a bit frustrated. It just kind of grates on me a little bit. Not like super mad at anybody, and I'm not going after any one person in particular. It's just like the general discourse I've been seeing, especially on Twitter, which, I mean, it's Twitter, what do you expect? But when it's happened to me, like, over the course of FGO's lifespan, I mean, like, 3 times now, basically to the same game, because it's just Genshin, then Star Rail, then Genshin 2, you know? I'm like, alright, I gotta say something, I gotta vent my thoughts, otherwise I'm gonna explode. But with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day, and tomorrow we'll probably have some normal content.